Welcome back to So Bad It's Good. Today, I'm so excited for today. This has been such a long time coming. These ladies have done something. I think they've really started some kind of movement, and it's a movement that is much needed to continue to not read. They read for you so you don't have to, and they are doing it at such a level. Their reading comprehension is such a level that these guys flood all of my feeds. I mean, one of the best TikToks, also best podcasts, but the best TikToks, I will go on their TikTok and just have the time of my life. I'm glad today I found out that they're finally getting the chairs that they so deserve for their recording space. Also, they have a tour coming up. You guys probably already know who this is when you read the title, but they're going overseas, y'all. They're going to like Ireland, London. They're going to be here as well. New York, Austin, all of these dates, which we'll talk about as well. And I want to talk about how they got their start, and just what it takes to read these books week after week. And some of these books are so awful, so awful. So without further ado, Claire Parker and Ashley Hamilton from Celebrity Memoir Book Club, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, whether or not we have decent reading comprehension is very up for debate.
My audience knows is that some of these books I've given up on reading. I go to the audiobook now, and I feel like that was, I read so much as a kid, and then I realized as I got older, TV started to happen and my reading comprehension fell off, and I still wanted to be a part of it. So I started listening to audiobooks, but I still have the feeling that I'm cheating by listening to an audiobook.
No, that's reading.
Cheating is counting Lala Kent's book as reading at all, like that, counting it as a book. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I did listen to Lala's book, and that's what I say about a lot of these books. These books, especially the Bravo centric ones, could just be a podcast, period.
They could be a podcast. You know what? They shouldn't even be a podcast. I don't know what they are.
They're a BuzzFeed article. They're honestly a BuzzFeed quiz where you pick your own adventure because they'll be whoever you want them to.
I mean, it's like, well, that's why I was using Craig Conover's book, Pillow Talk, as an example. And listen, the big struggle I had, like, there's one little struggle he went through in like the third grade. He was bullied for like a week or two. And that is the whole book.
If it was the third grade for a week or two, I'm sorry. I feel like this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but we talk about this all the time of like, there needs to be a general definition of bullying that gets like cemented in stone, because to say in third grade, I had my feelings hurt is really, really taking a whack at the kids who were bullied.
Well, I feel like it takes so little now to have a memoir, to have a book put out, especially if you're on Bravo. But you could put this even kind of in celebrity culture at large. And I mean, I guess I always wonder what the success of these books are. Do you pay attention to charts and things like that and what's popular and what's not?
So a little bit is one that you can tell if they're on the New York Times bestseller list. I guess that's the big deal. But the other thing is you've got the dagger of death that sometimes you have to look for on the New York bestseller list, which means that they were bought in bulk. So that's like Stassi Shutter, for example, has a dagger of death, which means her book was bought in bulk, which means the New York Times suspects there's been foul play. We call these books merch. We're like, they're not really books. They're just another way for them to slap their name on an object that can be sold. It's no different than a hoodie. It's no different, I say, than like when Harry Styles makes nail polish. It's a Hannah Montana backpack. Yeah.
Heather Gay's book made the New York Times bestseller list. And I was like, is that the Mormon church just buying up copies to burn them? But I mean, was that real sales or was there a dagger of death?
I would say that was real sales, but also, I mean, she has a hook that's deeply interesting. Mormonism is interesting. She has like a double backing of one, she's on Real Housewives, and then two, and the Real Housewives itself is so interesting with Jen Shaw. Like Real Housewives of Salt Lake City has been kind of a crazy series. And then when you have like a cult behind you, people are interested in cults.
Yeah. And then can I add another thing aside from the dagger of death that I think it's important to look for? The other thing that is important to remember is that not that many people buy and read books overall. So if you look at like, was she on the bestsellers list in like all nonfiction, or was she on the bestsellers list in like nonfiction, religion, or like nonfiction, you know, like there are like
gardening of a certain area. Yeah, they have all these different,
like a lot of categories in these lists that like once you like break it down and see like, okay, within this category, how many people even bought books in the last week?
Jamie Lynn Spears did that, where she called her book a bestseller, but it wasn't even a New York Times bestseller. It was like an Amazon bestseller in family drama nonfiction. It was like a super
It was a bestseller in Sister of Britney Spears.
Yeah, literally. It was the best Spears
one.
family book that week.
Well, Lala, there was a plotline on Vanderpump Rules a couple seasons ago where she wanted to make the New York Times bestseller list and she didn't make the New York Times bestseller list. And Rand, her ex, got her a cake. And I was kind of the mind of like, Randall, you'll pay literally for women, allegedly drugs, but you won't pay for like 1,000 copies of Lala's book to get her on the bestseller list. That kind of shocked me.
Well, the irony is, if you've read the LA Times article, it's not that he would have even bought the book. It's that he would have abused his assistants into using their own money to buy the book and then never paid them back. So it's not like he's paying these people back.
Randy, run to Target right now. Every Target in the Inland Empire. Before we get into the book specifically a little bit, I want to know about your how you guys came together. You're both stand-up comedians. You're both from New York. How did you meet each other? How did this podcast start? Tell me all that good stuff.
Yeah, we are both stand-up comedians. I started stand-up in LA and moved to New York in 2017 and met Claire at the open mics, just like within the comedy scene. We saw each other around a lot and we became friends pretty quickly and then decided to start a podcast about Britney Spears. So we spent over a year. I think we did 88 episodes of this Britney Spears podcast.
What was it called?
Hold on one second. We're talking about Britney Spears.
It has been scrubbed from the internet. Every episode was 48 minutes of me and Ashley talking about absolutely nonsense. And then like 8 minutes of us talking about, like, literally we'd get to minute 56 and be like, should we get into this week's topic of oops, I did it again? And then we wouldn't even know what we were talking about.
We'd be like, oh, she did do it again. So
oops.
Next week on Who's the Tabs.
Well, I mean, how did you come upon then books? Because this is such an amazing entrance point for you guys to be able to talk about pop culture knowledge, all of this stuff. It's such a, like, and it seems like kind of like this, interestingly, I don't mean this in a simple idea, but it's so good because it can go everywhere. Like, I mean, who came up with this idea?
Jessica Simpson. We stopped doing we stopped doing Who's with Tabs, as we called it, when the conservatorship stuff came out. So this would have been 2018. You know, there was another Britney Spears podcast that was kind of breaking the story. They're also comedians. We felt at that point, it was unclear what was really going on. And we were like, as two comedians, I'm not actually going to weigh in on like a legal dispute. We don't know what we're talking about. And our podcast was obviously very bantery, jokey. We love laughing about her khakis. Famously, we say she's the only celebrity who ever truly shopped her Candies by Kohl's line. And so like we like lovingly would tease her. And when we found out that she might be in trouble, we were like, oh, we don't want to talk about this anymore. Like, we don't want to talk because you have to make a comment and we don't feel comfortable saying she's a prisoner and we don't feel comfortable saying she's not. So we're going to just shut down the podcast.
For context, a lot of people like don't really understand the timeline of when this stuff was coming out. This was the spring after her like Vegas residency was announced and then canceled. And this,
so nobody in the public was talking about it. It was all in Twitter standum.
There was like, a underground Free Britney movement. Yeah.
It was very, I mean, it was like 30 people. Like it was very, and people like don't really understand. I feel like when the New York Times documentary came out, that's when everyone was talking about it. The New York Times, that was maybe a year and a half after we stopped the podcast because we were like, oh, this is too... what's the word?
So you felt
Exploitive.
that was about to, I mean, I remember that Friday night it came on, that New York Times one. Yeah.
I was thinking of the word nefarious.
Our feeling was like, if something is going on here, we cannot help the movement by doing what we're doing. We're not in a position to help. I don't feel I have the credentials to help. So I'd rather say nothing at all than like, because so many people have said to us like, oh, all of this drama around Britney, the conservatorship, this must be great for the podcast. And that's exactly what we're trying to get away from. We never wanted to be accused of like exploiting somebody's absolute trauma and hellscape. So we left that and we tried a whole other podcast about friendship, female friendship called We're in a Fight with Claire and Ashley. Me and Ashley fight all the time, famously. And it turns out that actually having a podcast about fighting is very toxic for friendship because it
really bad. Would not recommend
every week we would have to think about a thing we fought about. And it's actually not great for a relationship to constantly rehash every tiny little like misspeak. So we had to shut that down. But when we were looking for something else, Mariah Carey had just announced hers, and Jessica Simpson. I think Jessica Simpson announced, and Mariah Carey.
Jessica Simpson's book got released, and
it was that was open, or what was that called?
Open book.
Open book.
It was
and
January,
Mariah's The Meaning of Life, right?
It was January or February 2020. Jessica Simpson's book had just come out, and then Mariah announced that she was coming out with a book in November. It was like a whole, and we like started looking into it and realizing a lot of celebrities who were like our kind of era of celebrity were like kind of venturing into phase 2, like the second act of their careers, like with a memoir. So we thought it'd be really fun to like read celebrity memoirs. That way we could still talk about pop culture, but we didn't feel like we were exploiting anyone, digging through anyone's garbage, because they are putting these books out. Like whether or not they actually wrote them or it was a ghostwriter, they and their team are like fully co-signing the existence of this book. It's nothing is happening behind their backs for these books to come out.
Yeah,
so,
you're not doing unauthorized biographies. You're doing autobiographies that these people put out.
And me and Ashley, we love to talk shit. We love to gossip. I'm like literally just did a TikTok video today because a clip of me talking shit about Hailey Bieber keeps going viral, where I said that I had heard rumors that Churchill song had like given her to Justin as like a virgin sacrifice almost. And I'm like, listen, do I believe that? Yes. But also I was like, you guys can't use me doing this hearsay as evidence of anything. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I heard it. I choose to believe it.
Yes.
That's fun for me. But if you're like going to the government with evidence, I am not evidence. I am just a gossip. But so I think it was important for me and Ashley to be like, how do we control our love of being petty and talking about celebrities and talking about pop culture and analyzing it and do it in a way that is ethical? And I think we were both raised in the TMZ era of
me too.
People down. And now that we see what it's done to Britney Spears, I remember when Anna Nicole died, like just the
even see what it did to Justin Bieber. We're watching Justin Bieber go through it, right? I mean, like this guy can't keep a tour going to save his life. And I mean, it people don't really realize, you think it's all glitter and gold. And you're just like, look at this other side of it. Imagine you on your worst day getting pictures pushed out to everybody in the whole wide world. And then people on top of it being able to say whatever they want about you. Like, you got such a fat ass. Like, that is insane to do mentally.
Yeah. So we've been like, how do we get to talk shit about people in a way that feels fair? And this is the answer.
Did it work immediately?
No, nothing.
No, I mean, did you start the podcast and you're like, oh, this is it.
I think we realized that this was like an iterative thing that we were proud of, but you could go, Ashley, but no, it did not blow up overnight.
Yeah. I would say it was it was our third podcast that we'd done, and it was our most successful podcast, like within like 2 to 3 months, probably. Like within a couple months, we were like, okay, this is going much better than the others.
I don't even mean successful, but like to you guys, was it like the flow was like, instead of fighting with each other, you actually took the onus off yourself and the spotlight? Did you know actual, like, this is so much easier to talk?
When you're failing at something, you're mad. And we were both doing our full-time jobs. And I think it took, and we didn't even figure out the flow of the podcast. Ashley has been going back for ad purposes and listening to the old episodes, and she's like, oh my God, we were so bad at this.
Yeah, I think if you go back and listen to some of the early, even like we've been podcasting at that point for like 3 or 4 years together. And when I listened to those first couple of episodes, I think we were toying with like the format of the podcast as a whole until we launched in September 2020. And I think until probably April or May of 2021, we were still really like working on the format. And then I don't think it was like something that I would have sat down and called good and successful until like spring of 2022.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, something we really didn't understand at the beginning is that if people like the value we add is, and we like to think we're funny and we like to think we're insightful, but really the value we add that I'm absolutely sure of is that we've read the book so that you don't have to. And I think it took us a while to realize, like, okay, if people are trusting our opinions on the book, we have to tell them what's in the book too. And for a while we were just like chatting about the book. And if you were a listener who hadn't read it, you'd be like, I don't know what's going on. You're just bopping around, pulling quotes that make no sense.
I think one of the biggest compliments I can give you guys is that I see this all the time. I mean, I think this has been in my Facebook group, in comments that I've seen just regularly, that I like, oh, I'm not going to read that book. I'm going to wait for them to cover it because I'll then, like, that's what I would rather do.
We love to hear that.
And that's not even that's not even a wink, I'm being funny. This is how I'd prefer to read the book, is through them. And I think that's that really is special. Could you imagine that it's at this point where you're going overseas to do a live tour? Like, I mean, I know you guys seem to handle things really well, and you seem really calm every time I just really put together, but I imagine at a certain point you couldn't have imagined this over a podcast.
I don't know that we're like so big that it's unimaginable. I'm like, we're still,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to. I just think for a podcast, it's really special. This one in particular that you do, that people want to see you live.
No, and I think because we're both live performers first and foremost, and we are in the comedy space. So I think something that we have that a lot of podcasters don't have is we are like not in a podcast community, but we're in a community of people who have podcasts. And so I feel like I look like at people around me that I've seen blow up with podcasts. And so I always knew it was possible. And I always find it disingenuous when the people at the Oscars being like, I never in a million years could have even dreamed. I'm like, every single one of us, even if you're not an actor, I have fantasized about winning a Grammy. And what I would say, I cannot hold a tune to save my life. So I can't sit here and be like, I never would have imagined. I had hoped this, and we've both been at it now. We've been doing comedy each for almost a decade. So I'm so thrilled and grateful and happy it's working out. But I can't sit here and lie and be like, I never would have imagined. Like, no, I've been working every day towards this exact place for a decade. And I'm like, I finally did.
To be like I never imagined that we would like be at least like making a living off of comedy and podcasting. I'm like, I really spent every day until we were hoping that at some point I would be making a living off of podcasting or comedy. So I like had to believe it would happen. Otherwise, I had spent the last decade of my life just like doing who the fuck knows what.
I guess I really didn't believe in myself. This is like, no, the Malcolm Gladwell thing. I always that was pounded into my head in acting school with like 10,000 hours. And it is interesting that it's like, wow, all my 10,000 hours led to this. Like, it's not exactly how I imagined it, but now, like, even live shows. Yeah, I have my live show planned out. Like, I have it in my head. I know what it is. I don't have any dates or anything like that. But like, of course you imagine that. Like, I think it's like that stupid thing of like every girl imagines when they're going to get married someday. It's like every podcaster imagines when they go on tour. Every podcaster imagines when they get ads. It's just kind of this natural progression. But it is interesting to be able to look to you guys, and I'm just always like really inspired. Like, I watch you guys and there is this I just think there's this comfortability, and there's like, you guys, when I watch you or listen to you, I feel very comfortable in the sense that you guys are confident in what you're doing. So it's like you guys steering any ship. I'm like, hell yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I will say another thing that I think has helped is that I think that people who haven't like had their foundation in live shows like view live shows in like a much more complicated way than me and Claire do. Like, when we started doing like our first live podcast, because we came up doing stand-up and in the alternative comedy scene. So people were just like throwing up shows in any broom closet or hallway. So like the first venue that we ever did a live show in was a room that I had done stand-up in like several times before. So it didn't feel like quite a like, wow, this is it. We're like finally doing a live pod. Like, I never thought I'd be live in this room. Like, I had already been live in that room. And so it was like very cool that like we had a room full of people who were excited to like see us and our podcast. Like, the difference was that we were excited, like we were happy people wanted to see us and our podcast, not that we were like getting on stage to perform, you know?
Yeah. No, I was one of the presenters at Watch What Crappens last week at like in Los Angeles at this huge venue, the Wiltern, so beautiful. And it's so funny because at the end of the day, it's just those two dudes with the table doing their thing at such a great level. But there's no like, it's not like Rihanna. There's like seven stages that are like floating up and down. It's just them. And that's what people are coming to see, is just them or just you guys. And but in terms of live shows though, what does Celebrity Memoir Book Club live show? I was listening to it. You say you guys do a little stand-up, you do some audience interaction, you'll do a mini book club report. What is your upcoming tour going to look like?
So we do stand up top. We actually, it's funny that you're like, oh, I went and saw these guys. There's this huge room and it was just the two of them. We have been told by our agent, he's like, you should get a visual, like there should be a PowerPoint or something behind you. And we're like, so we're thinking about adding a PowerPoint, a visual aspect, but it has been suggested. I'm like, can it be pyro? And he's like, I don't really think that would add value to your show.
If you guys have smoke, if you come out and smoke and things like that, and there's like,
the only thing me and Claire have ever really dreamed of is like, that's it. When we're like, I've always wanted to have a sparkler.
Yeah. We were thinking about
that.
getting someone to sing the national anthem like it was a sporting event before every show. That makes
But we
Jessica,
are-
if you can get Jessica Simpson to come out with you, that would be amazing.
I mean, yeah, it would be amazing.
CNBC with Jessica Simpson opening.
I could see
That'd be
it.
pretty great.
I did mushrooms at the Celebrity Memoir Book Club live show. It was amazing. They had the laser light show, blew your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, we would love that. But it's so we do
I would
stand up
love
and then
a laser light show.
you guys are gonna come and it's just gonna be laser tag. It's gonna have been like show
Hey,
canceled.
everybody put their laser packs on. Try to get Ashley.
But we do stand up and then we find a essay written by a celebrity because celebrities love to guest write an essay for a magazine or the New York Times. And so we do like in 15 to 20 minutes, we're able to do essentially what an episode is, but live on an essay. We never repeat the essays or we try not to repeat the essays. I guess as we have more and more live shows, we might have to eventually, but it's always like a one-off thing. We don't record them. It dies in that room. And then we play a really fun game where it's kind of like, would you rather, where we each have to pick a celebrity that we've done a book on from a deck and we don't know. And we have to like defend why you'd rather go to the moon with Lena Dunham or Kendra Wilkinson. Who would you rather go to jail with for the night? Like Common or who else have we read? Pamela Anderson. Like, it's just.
Yeah. Like,
fun
who would
stuff
you
like that.
rather like be the godmother of your children, Kris Jenner or,
Olivia Munn.
Olivia Munn?
You
And
got to go
so-
Kris Jenner just for the gifts. I mean, you
But
got to.
so then we have to like fight for our person. So we pick them at random. And so like if I picked Olivia Munn, then I have to like come up with like a reason to try and convince the audience that Olivia Munn would actually be a good godmother.
Okay. Well, I'm in. I'm fully in. When's the Los Angeles date? Come on.
It just passed. It was in January.
Yeah.
What the
Sold
hell?
out a Dynasty typewriter. Sold
Oh, I
out
love
in a
that
few
theater.
days.
I
yeah.
wouldn't have been able to even get in if I wanted to. But congratulations. That's a great venue. Okay, let's get to the books a little bit because you just covered Common's book, which is what conscientious rapper?
Yes.
Conscious rap. Yeah.
Conscious rap. And I hear it's a very slow book. It's a very tedious book at times. What was your overall opinion on Common's autobiography?
It felt to us, I would call it after school special. He's very much somebody who I think has bought into his own branding and now is more interested in just like keeping the checks churning, as corny as it may be. It felt very like things were hard, but if you work hard and smile and respect your mom, it's all going to work out.
Eat your vegetables. Yeah.
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 Does he talk about his relationship with Kanye?
Yes, a lot. Ashley, do you want to Ashley is from Chicago, so I feel like this
Oh
is
yeah. It's
an
important
Ashley
to me.
question. And she's Jewish, so I feel like she's allowed to say whatever she
Oh,
wants to say
I have a
about
very
Kanye.
complicated relationship with I don't usually now like to talk about him, but I am because I know him and Common had such
Yeah.
an interesting relationship.
I mean, literally same. I'm like, it's been a really, I mean, the thing is, it's not like new what Kanye has been saying. It's just like bigger. So I'm like, it's been like a long unwinding of my like nostalgia and my like memories from Kanye's ness. But I mean, yeah, they like came up together. I feel like Common was kind of like the cool guy who like helped bring Kanye into like who he is. And he like has a little thing about like the prince and the master, like the prince and the, like what I think he like has like a weird thing of being like, and then Kanye surpassed me, but it's good. We love each other still. I don't know. I don't think it was like, there wasn't anything salacious. I feel like everything I've ever read about Kanye from like when he was young is all people just being like, he's always been like that. Like he's always just been like a really confident and passionate person.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it in those documentaries. I mean, the Kanye autobiography, that would be, I mean, but people, that's the crazy thing about the Kanye. Sorry to get off topic, but like people started, I didn't realize, people were like, oh, he's always been like this. He's always said anti-Semitic things his entire career. I was like, what?
His in the book, Common is like, and I know he says crazy things, but I'll always stand by him. That's my guy. Like like no matter what. And then even Common's mom is like, I'm friends with Donda. Kanye has a good heart. But I know he says crazy things, but that's just a part of him. And this book came out in 2012, 2011.
Yeah.
So this was 11 years. It was always already like, I know, but I think they were more talking about the Taylor Swift stuff. They were talking about the George Bush hates Black people stuff. So yeah, I do think when you see how consistent it's been, you have to kind of like blame the people around him for like how bad it's gotten and how kind of like evil it's gotten, because You know what I mean? You can't keep giving people
Yeah.
power. I don't know.
I mean, at the
Well,
end
I
of the
totally
day,
agree with you.
at the end of the day, he has been like, basically everything I've ever heard of him is like from the beginning, like day one in the recording studio, like the first time he ever like met anyone, he's always been the kind of guy who will like just get up on a table and start like rapping and like hyping people up and like just like he's like a
Well,
loud
it's
and
attractive to a degree, and then I think we
exactly.
now, now we're having decades relationship with some of these celebrities, and at a certain point, there is like a level where you're like, oh, this is exhausting on top of really dangerous because we've blown this person up so much that this person now thinks of themselves as a godlike figure and having all of this power. And that's when I believe like, it's like, oh, wow, this is really scary because it's dangerous. And especially if you're on like TikTok or something and you see all these like doofy kids going like, hell yeah, Kanye. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, I blame the corporations. I think when you're Adidas and you would rather sell sneakers than protect your workers. Like when you hear the stories about how he would watch porn in business meetings, and that was years before they cut ties. That's when you just say, okay, it is somebody in power's responsibility to step in and say, the money isn't worth it. We can't keep propping him up, because when the money stops, you go get help. Because you don't have to go get help when $1 billion is coming in and everyone on your team is getting 10% of that. Nobody wants it to stop.
I was going to say, like, no one wants it to stop. And I do feel like there are a lot of people who will like really, really reinforce a pattern. Like if the validation you're getting is financial and attention, if people are only going to continue to work with you and continuing to give you attention, positive or negative, it literally doesn't matter. It just is attention and money. And if those two things continue, then like, why change your behavior? If you stop getting work, if you stop getting attention, you stop making headlines, people stop working with you, you're not getting attention or money, you have to change.
I keep talking about this, and it kind of goes even into Housewives and potentially Heather Gay, is that I've noticed a shift in pop culture where it doesn't matter good or bad anymore, as long as it's attention. Like it used to just be like, let's really try to put something good out there and be popular. And now it's like, well, negativity, like you see the Jen Shaw of it all, or you see the like, and the people are like kind of thriving of like, I'm going to put out a stupid statement because it's going to like actually get attention, which Heather Gay's book shocks me in so many ways as I was listening to it, because the Jen Shaw of it all is barely in there. Like it's like Jen Shaw, what a powerhouse. Like, like nothing about, she knocked me in the eye. Like it was just like, what a force of nature. It was just so slim in that. And I was like, what a pussy in a way.
I mean, more than slim, she specifically calls out this incredible night that she had on the tab of the business. Like the story she shares about Jen Shaw is going out for a business dinner where they are 3 hours late to in a dinner with employees, and which is supposed to be supporting them. It's supposed to be like a celebratory dinner where she thanks her employees by taking them a night out. She shows up 3 hours late, invites the Uber driver, invites the glam squad. They're overpacking the restaurant, and then they all go out, and presumably the business is paying for it. And now we all know the truth, which is that the business was being paid for by scamming elderly people. And it's like, Heather, have some decorum. It's one thing that it happened. You don't have to talk about it in your book, or if you're going to talk about it in your book, you don't have to talk about it in this incredible positive light of like the best night of your life and the reason why you love Jen Shaw. It is crazy to be like, well, he spoiled me with the money he stole.
See, that book was so frustrating to me because at its core, it's still better than like Craig Conover's book, because the religion aspect of it, like you said, if you like that foundation of religion and want to learn about the Mormon religion, she does reveal a lot of things that you're not supposed to reveal about the Mormon religion. So if you're new to that, that might be interesting to you. But also the little device she uses by keep like referring to 80s like movie like oh, I'll be your wingman any day and like those keep throughout the book. But to me, the whole thing was, I know this is the one and true church. I love God. I believe in God. I serve God. And then all of a sudden I can be on Bravo. Peace out, God. I love you, Andy Cohen. And that it's just this really weird shift at the end where it kind of shows you, listen, God is cool and all, but if you have a chance to be on TV, there's a really great opportunity to be better than you ever thought you could be. And that's where the book ends.
Well, our big criticism in the book is that it's clear she has not had time, and she couldn't have, even if she wanted to really deconstruct what happened. She has not been able to sort through the trauma that has been caused by that church, and also the way that it sets your brain up. And a really interesting thing that we read Julia Hart's memoir, from unorthodox. And even though she
Yeah.
is like a crazy person, of course, you kind of have to take everything she says with a grain of salt. She's very smart and manipulative, I think. But she talks about how her mother went from being a super like intense person in communist Russia, the USSR, to they turn on communist Russia, they move to the US, and she goes from being completely atheist, raised atheist in communism, to becoming an Orthodox Jew. And you think, how does that happen? And you go, oh, it's because when your brain has been primed to follow a set of rules and absorb a set of values whole cloth, it's hard to undo not just like who the leader is, but what it means to like look to a leader, an absolute leader. And I think in Heather Gay's case, she was following to a T. She was trying to win over the respect and the acceptance of the Mormon church. And she left that for reality TV. And what I'm concerned for her, because she seems like a nice person, I wish her the best, is I think that first season of TV, she won. She won fan favorite. She did win over the public.
I loved her.
Oh no, God bless Hannah Berner. You cannot be the public's favorite, but for so long, and they will turn on you. It is an impossible game to win because you can't win over America. And then the editors, they like to have a villain. They like to turn things. They got to edit it and keep it spicy. And I worried that she is now doing everything. Her new god is followers and fans, and she is going to fucking ruin her life trying to be perfect enough for them.
Oh, think about in the book, you guys, they talk about her divorce, and she got pulled over for the, DUI, which wasn't really a DUI. And all of this kind of fall from grace. And she was talking about after, the Billy leaving Billy. But then this is a whole nother thing that I think is going to further traumatize her, because she doesn't seem to still have like dealt with this past relationship at all. And now she like, imagine being insecure about how people reacted to you and your body and things like that. And then all of a sudden you're celebrated for it. And now there's another fall from it, because I'm sure I know she saw all of the discourse about how big of a flop it was this season. And also in the book, it does come off like, she's like, well, I helped them put the show together. I filled out every piece of paperwork about all the characters and I gave it to them. And so she was like producing in her head. And we saw it this season of her trying to produce on the show, and it just didn't work at all. But it's frustrating to read or to listen to her side of it, because it still doesn't seem like any excuse for any of the behavior in some ways.
It's hard for me to say because I didn't watch this season yet. I think I watched the first 3 episodes and already was like, when they were fighting in Arizona or whatever, I was like, what the hell is going on here? I did find it interesting that nobody wanted Heather to be, or Whitney to be in it. It does make sense.
Yes.
It seems so different than what shocked me about the book is the way she like sucked Meredith's dick so hard. The way she talked about Brooks made me physically uncomfortable.
Oh, and up and one of the best designers of all time. And I'm like,
she's like, she's the chicest woman in New York. She's the most social woman in Salt Lake. She is the coolest, most connected woman in Los Angeles. I'm like, no, she's fucking not. Her husband doesn't even own his house.
I mean, it's so crazy the thing that she says about like, oh, and like Brooks was wearing pink shirts before it was cool. It's like, what are you talking? Like, speaking of Kanye, there's like a literal line in his song where Kanye thinks that he was the inventor of pink shirts for men, like, and that was years ago.
Well,
we all know the inventor of pink shirts was like 80s, like movie villains. Like those were the purveyors of pink shirts.
Well, she goes, before it was gender bending. It'd be one thing to say before it was like norm or cool, but she goes, before, I was like, wearing it before it was cool is when it was gender bending. So actually you can't wear it before it was gender bending, because I guess the before it was gender bending was in the 1800s was pink, when pink was considered masculine. But like, to have worn it before its prime was the gender bending time to wear it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, you also got sent a PR kit from Heather for this book, and you guys make a point of like, listen, we don't get a lot of PR things. Glad we do. It's really not going to change how we speak about this book. It's exciting to get things. I mean, that's the other thing is like, we always want to make sure anybody that gives us this information cannot be swayed by some confetti-filled PR packet.
There was confetti.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that she DM'd us personally. She did DM'd us personally and was like, hey, can you read my book? And then it was so funny because it was clear she didn't understand. I feel bad. She didn't understand what we do, but she had seen all of our Prince Harry TikToks where we like go through the book and do essentially promo for it. And she was like, can I get the whole Harry treatment where you TikToks about me? And I'm like, yeah, of course, we're going to promote ourselves. Like, that's how we promote. But I don't think she knows our reputations for like giving our honest opinions. And I also wonder, I'm sure she does think that this is as good as it could be. We have a little bit of a higher expectation. We felt it wasn't super. Did you feel the whole section about getting divorced from Billy it was weirdly opaque. No, like she's always almost about to tell you what happened. She talks around it a lot in a weird, like you're like, say it or don't say it.
I'm very confused. Yeah. I feel like a lot of those things, like, you know, she would get to the precipice, like all of a sudden, even in the Mormon missionary to Paris, or, you know, it's like all of a sudden, like, you know, the 15 months just went by. Like there's a couple specific stories, but I'm like, wait a sec, there's gotta be like 15 months is a long time. Like bring me more into that day-to-day feeling of the grind of like throwing out crab pots and not getting anything in response. I mean, to me, there was just so much where I was like, this is fascinating. Go further with this because this is real. But I'm trying to think of you as a real person. And the other thing, since you guys didn't watch this season, was she kept talking about the shame that she felt because of her upbringing in this thing. But even at the end of this season, you guys, she was like getting naked and rubbing her tatas against Jen Shah's naked tatas. And like, and I'm like, wait, you're shamed, but like you're totally down for putting this on the TV. It's so weird.
Well, I have two things to say. And one is something that I've like realized just as we're talking about it now. I think the problem with the book is it has been pitched and they wanted to sell it as the way that I broke away from Mormonism. And it's supposed to, and it's written. And when you said like it's always on the precipice, that's when it kind of clicked for me. It's supposed to be written in this direction of, and that's when this chunk kind of came undone for me. And that's when this next level got unlocked. And that's when I started to slowly distance myself. And so as you read the book, you keep expecting there to be not even just one great aha moment, and then I started experimenting here. But the truth of the matter is she would have died in that Mormon church had Amy Cohen not come along. Maybe in 40 years, she would have given it up as like a 6-year-old. But she, until she didn't, wanted her best to stay in the church. I was shocked to realize that she hadn't officially left until the show, like on air, when she's like, I told my kids on air. I'm like, well, that's fucked up. But I want to say the other thing that you're saying, like, well, if you have so much shame, then why you're doing this? I don't think it works that way where you're like truly held back by your shame. I think like that's the problem with shame, is that you can't actually behave how you want to because you're overblowing it. It's almost like a binge thing. Like, well, I refuse to be shamed, so I'm going to go so far over the top. And then the next day you're like, why did I do that? But you know what I mean? I don't think that those things are necessarily at odds. Like, of course she was raised with shame. Like Mormonism thrives on shame.
You're wearing superhero underwear just to protect yourself from accidents, you know?
But I don't know that she's not sitting in bed at night being like, what do people think of me? I'm horrified. Why do I act? Like, do you know what I mean? I don't think it's as easy as that. And
totally, I also you go
so hard in the other direction. Yeah.
But I think sometimes she uses the shame part. Just watching this season, she then, I think, learned to use the shame excuse as a crutch at times of like, that's just my shame acting out. That's just because I think she does know it plays when she needs it to play, not to take away that there is not shame there. I just think she keeps going to that well. And it's like, well, you're not course correcting your behavior at all. And to your guys' point, so, I mean, you know, breaking free from a religion, all you got to do, guys, is just get a Bravo show. All you Scientologists out there, all you like, just to have Andy make a show around you, and then you're good as gold.
I mean, it's so funny because I do think with the shit, like it all ties back to she hasn't had time to process it. And I do think she's like, well, they told me having sex is so bad. And because I don't believe in their values anymore, I'm going to fuck anybody. I'll fuck Jen Shah. And you're like, okay, is that actually what you want? Are you still operating as a point of like, they're still first and foremost the perspective, and now you're just the opposite of that perspective. Like you're still not yourself. It's hard. I mean, it takes people entire lifetimes to deprogram themselves.
Oh, I couldn't even imagine writing a book about my Catholic experience, which wasn't nearly as traumatic at all. But I just can't imagine putting that into words or trying to think about what being an altar boy did to me, or what, you know, like coming week in and week out. Like those things are really, I think sometimes takes a lifetime to process. And for a Simon & Schuster book to try to throw it all down on paper on top of people wanting to just hear about the housewives, I think is a wild task. Do you guys know, I tried to find this out, did Heather Gay have a ghostwriter for this? Because in some of these books, they do credit, like, you know, Craig's like with Blake Dvorak, or it'll have this person that they wrote it with. Heather, I couldn't find a ghostwriter anywhere in the material.
Sure she did.
That's what I was thinking, but I was like, does sometimes Simon & Schuster not say that they have a ghostwriter if they don't want it to be out there? Because this didn't seem like, I mean, just in terms of even the plot the devices, like I said, the 80s phrases and stuff that kept getting thrown in there. And it just hard pressed for me to think that Heather was putting that in there.
She might have been, but I think like they pick up on, like, I think they pick up on what you want to put down. I'm sure when she talks, she'll be like, you know, I thought it was like the 80s. And they're like, okay, that's conversationally her go-to metaphor.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I would say probably structurally, she definitely had someone like working with her on it. I think like whether or not the ghostwriter is credited like in the book, on the cover, in the acknowledgements, wherever, I think is just part of the deal you put down with them. So I think that there are a lot of different like deal structures when it comes to like ghost or co-writing books.
Ashley,
Okay.
what's your what's that?
Sorry, I just had the book here with me right now, and one of the people she acknowledges, sometimes they hide it in the acknowledgement, and they'll use like language like, for the person you spent hours with me shaping my vision.
Yeah.
So she thanks Natasha Simons for endless patience, thoughtful guidance, unending compassion, and scores of support. And then if you look, I just Googled her real quick. If you look up Natasha Simons, she's an executive editor. But I would guess that she helped Stassi Schroeder, Maddie Ziegler. These are people,
all the greats, yeah,
who are not writing their own books.
Maddie Ziegler wrote a book.
I guess.
A child.
Well, hey, you guys just found your next one. Hey, Ashley, what's your favorite book you've covered so far, and what's your least favorite book you've covered so far?
That is hard to say. There are some books I've really loved. I always go to like Molly Shannon as like a go-to recommendation. Like for any mood, I think that is like kind of a gold standard of like something for everybody, and it has heart and truth, and it's funny, and it's like heartfelt. And then least favorite, I guess there are so many categories of least favorite. Like, who did I like hate the most? Whose book did I just like? I guess Josh Peck, I think, had the most profoundly bad effect on me specifically, that like it wasn't the worst book we've ever covered, but it like put me in a really bad mood.
What did Josh Peck do to put you in a bad mood?
He just reminded me a lot of an ex in the way that he is annoying and stupid.
No, that makes sense. You guys did The Impossible, and when Spare came out in the last couple of months, you read it like within, I think, like a day or two to cover it. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we read most of our books in about a day and a half.
But that was huge. That book was insanely thick.
That one we couldn't get an advance copy because they weren't no one got an advance copy. There was a leak, but I don't know. We were like, we'll get it when it gets out. So we went to the bookstore at 9 a.m. to buy it and read it, and then recorded it the next day, and then released it the following day.
Was that, are there ever times where you're like, what the hell are we doing with our lives? Bless you. Like, yes. Do you ever get that? Like, what the hell are we doing?
I feel like in some ways, yes, because we're like, this is crazy. This was an odd choice. But then there are I used to like, work late and have like a really stressful week or two about a deadline when I was a copywriter. And so now having like a stressful deadline, like doing my own podcast where people are excited to like hear my thoughts, and I get to like talk about like just celebrities with my best friend. I'm like, okay, having like a really annoying couple of days is a lot more fun now.
You were talking about on your TikTok, the fights that you get into, and you had a whole podcast about the fights you get into. What is the most recent fight you guys have had?
Oh my God. We've had a few recently. We had one like yesterday or 2 days ago, because I didn't like the way Ashley organized the deck. We got into a fight about chairs. Was that
Yeah, by the way, your chair journey, I was guys on TikTok. I'm telling you, one of the most fun accounts on TikTok. I mean, I just love their account so much. But they were talking about like Ashley, you had like this dream of getting sponsored for some chairs because listen, you are a very successful podcast. You need comfort to sit in, and it looks like you have a clubhouse. Like it's like, to me, that's like a bat cave. That's my dream, is to have a clubhouse I go to, and you guys have one, and you're trying to deck it out. And you were going to DM every chair company in the world. And Claire, very negative, saying, you can't do it. You can't do this. You will not do this. And then today I check, I think you got somebody that reached out to you to give you chairs.
Yeah, it was actually the first brand that I reached out to. It's just, I feel like corporate schedules operate a little bit different than like podcaster schedules, where I'm like, if they haven't responded in 12 hours, that means it's a no. When really it's like, I don't know, they probably had to like go through their inbox at some point and then like have a team meeting. I don't know. So it was actually like the first or second company that I even like thought of ended up coming through for us. But
that being said, when we first moved in the studio, how many people did we reach out to that we got no's across the board? Like we've gotten a lot of no's in our life.
We've gotten a lot of no's in our lives. People listen.
No, but I love that you guys.
And be honest, it was not the first couple you reached out to. This was your second attempt at reaching out to. So like the first wave 2 weeks ago, we got like 10 no's.
This was from the first wave.
Okay. I feel like we got a lot of no's there where people were like, oh, maybe in the future.
If you could have a huge fight right now, that would be so great. Just for the show.
You would think that podcast did not do well. It turns out people don't love listening to fights on podcasts.
It's like super awkward, actually. Yeah.
But we did this. If you look at the dates, it was in the first wave that I reached out to them, and then they came through a couple weeks later. So
I wonder if they came through because they saw my TikTok, though.
Maybe.
I kind of feel like my TikTok got a lot of like credit. That's why I feel like that made them be like, oh, did they reach out to us?
But see, that's why it works, though. You guys want to punching it. That's why I think it works. Is that like I was like, damn, that's why I always love team podcasts, because it's like, you know, if you don't have a certain strength, the other person always seems to have that strength, and vice versa. And together you can accomplish so much more than just solo.
Yeah.
And I always really think that's so cool. I just finished Pamela Anderson's book, Love, Pamela. And you guys cleared this up for me too. I was really confused. You said she had originally turned in like a 50-page poem instead of a book. Is that true?
It was in her like epilogue or in her acknowledgments. She was like, thank you to my editor for saying, hey, that original poem, you should expand it and make it a book.
I don't think she even said that. I think she said, I want to write a book. Here's a 50-page poem. And they said, actually, a 50-page poem isn't a great book. Would you like to add more?
I mean, I love that Pamela Anderson Netflix documentary. Like I kind of like devoured that, and I didn't expect to like it as much. And it actually changed my opinion on her a little bit and made me understand the Tommy Lee sex tape thing from a different lens. And I was really blown away. The book for me, not anticlimactic, but it was after seeing that, to me, it was this natural weird thing, which I believe you guys talked about it as well, where you can kind of tell where there are poem elements in the sense of like, all of a sudden she's like, and then I married Bob, Kid Rock. Like, and it was like, you jump from this all of a sudden to, well, how did you meet Kid Rock, Pamela? How did that even happen? There was a lot of like just jumping forward where it was kind of just stream of consciousness, I felt at times.
And it's interesting because I think what makes a great memoir is a combination of the two. I always say the worst kind of memoir there is like a Dave Grohl memoir. It's a plot memoir where you go, okay, well, this is just a first person account of your Wikipedia page. If somebody else in the room could have told the same story as you, then it's not your memoir. I don't want to hear, because he does a lot of like, and then I was in Ohio and we were opening up for this band and they ran out of a guitarist. So then I got to guitar for them. And then because of that, I got to meet Prince. And then because of that, and it is very like, here is how I did XYZ. And honestly, unless you're very interested in the lore of that particular celebrity, that's not a great memoir. A great memoir is the emotional truths for me. Yeah. So someone like Pam Anderson, even though I think all those facts, like, well, how did you meet Kid Rock? I think you could Google it. I want what I can't Google. I want, how did you feel? Where were you emotionally? Like, why do you keep ending up with these incredibly crusty, trashy men? Only she can tell me the emotional truth of her like childhood that gets me to understand who she is as a person. So I didn't have a problem so much with her because I feel like Heather Gay, there was a lack of emotional truth that explained. Like I was looking for the plot points. I was looking for like, but what was happening? What was the clash in your marriage? Why did you not like each other?
This is something that I think gets us into like fights with people on the internet, is because we are both much more interested in the emotional truth. Like if this is how they are saying, like a memoir is like a retelling of your memories. It is not a fucking rundown of the agenda. Like there's not a stenographer. Is that a courtroom person?
And then the second grade happened.
Out your life. Like this is like, what are the things that we always say, like, even when a memoir can be like, has like pretty big holes, the things that they think were important are like what tell the story. And so sometimes like Prince Harry was a big one. Whenever there is a memoir that has like true like stands and people like historians looking at the details will say like, okay, well, this is what happened. And then someone will be like, actually, the true fact of it is, and it's like, actually, the true fact of it is irrelevant, because if this is how they felt about what happened, that is like the story that we're looking for. I don't give a shit what day of
yeah, a good example would be like if two celebrities met at the VMAs or something in 2001 and then they ended up dating and they're doing a memoir. They're like, well, in 2004 I first saw her in this restaurant and she was so beautiful, and then somebody's like, actually here's a photo of you two on the first time you met. It's like, okay, maybe literally the first time we spoke words was here, but like emotionally, when I became aware of this person as an important person in my life, it was this day. Like, and to say
the internet is so fun. You guys know how fun the internet is. It is like, I wrote this stupid tweet yesterday of like, I just had ChatGPT write an episode of Vanderpump Rules. And by the way, I didn't. It was just a stupid it was just because I've been messing around with ChatGPT and I just thought, oh, like this would be a stupid tweet. Somebody writes today, retweets that and goes, huh, so is everybody else, rolling eye emoji. And I'm like, what is wrong with, and I was like, so sorry I didn't check the internet, you idiot. People just want to
talking about. I mean,
also that's not true. Everybody in the world has not used ChatGPT to rewrite an episode of Vanderpump Rules. I would go so far as to say nobody has done that. If you haven't, then nobody has.
But I was like, who else? But also I'm like, so sorry that I didn't put a Google. Also, this isn't a real tweet. Like I don't tweet my real like actual life on Twitter. So it is interesting just in terms of, I mean, you say that, but like dealing with the internet, with what you guys do, what would you say the percentage is awesome, negative?
I guess overall, and it depends on like my overall state of mind that day, because like when you look at the bigger picture of it, I'm like, it has given us the careers we have. So that's
also the truth is and I think anybody who's been online knows this, 99% can be good comments. 6 bad comments and your day is ruined, and it does not matter what 1,000 other people said. It matters what those 6 people said.
It's so hard to explain that to people to really have them get it, like
the memoir truth of it all is
well, when you wake up and then all of a sudden you're hit, like a lot of I'm still getting used to that, of waking up and having a bunch of things of people trying to reach to you in some way, and I don't mean that in any sort of bragging way, but it's just I was used to a couple people like including my mom that would try to get a hold of me, and now waking up and like most of it's really positive, but one's like, you're a fucking joke, and then you're just like, how did this person find out that I'm a fucking joke? And that's the one that really sticks. And it's weird because you're bitching about like a podcast or something, but it really does make a dent sometimes, depending on the day.
Because they're not bitching about a podcast, they're bitching about you. This is me on my like, if you hate me, you hate me. And if you hate the podcast, that's also the thing I worked 40 hours a week on and have dedicated my career to. Like, I don't know, it is a stupid podcast, but it is the thing that I have like wholeheartedly worked on and am proud of. And
then I've worked harder at this than anything in my life. And it like each day is this grind, but it's this kind of beautiful grind of like, I've never really enjoyed something as much as this. Do you guys feel that way as well? Because you're also stand-ups. You also have relationships outside of, you're getting married soon. You're getting like, how is this in terms of like that feeling for you?
I definitely think there's good days and bad days. I think I always try to remember my worst day doing this. Well, that's not true, but my worst day doing this has probably been one of the worst days of my life. But overall, when I complain about this is the best job in the world, but at the end of the day, it is still a job. And as soon as something starts paying your bills, you have a responsibility to it that goes above like just your love and your passion, because you are beholden to the people who listen and pay your rent. So in that way, stand-up has become the thing that I think I love the most as like because it's truly a hobby still. That being said, when I was only doing stand-up made me want to kill myself. But I love this.
Yeah. But I love doing it. And I think that overall, I will say I like one time saw an interview, and by no means are we like hugely successful or famous or whatever. But I saw like one time a celebrity was like in an interview, and it was someone who was bigger. And they were like, how do you handle the criticism? And she was talking about like working really hard at like working on the idea that like, if you let the bad ones in, you have to let the good ones in. And so she was saying like, if I'm going to let bad reviews and bad things affect me, then I have to let the good things affect me the same way. And there are more good things than bad things if you're like doing your best.
It's so hard to do, man.
It's so hard, but it is like really important to try and do. And I mean, I'm not good at it. Like I'll get a bad comment and like send a voice note to Claire, like on the edge of tears, but like, But yeah, I think
I don't know why I laughed
overall-
at that. Sorry. You left a crying voice note. Hysterical. No, I just, because
It's
there's so
funny.
many times where I feel like that, where I'm just like, oh my God, I'm not used to having people have opinions on everything that I say. And listen, I realize that a lot of the things I say are stupid, and I've realized that my entire life. You're just catching up to it. We just have a couple more minutes here. Also, really quick, that Pamela, you know what really stuck out of that Pamela Anderson book is that, and this didn't come in the documentary, that her dad drowned a bag of kittens.
Oh my God.
Do you remember that moment?
Yeah.
There is a lot of animal cruelty in the 80s that this is
Who did we
not the
just
first-
read? Oh,
Someone-
Steak Tooth. Her dad or her mom, she like casually mentions that her mom bought her a puppy once and then ran over the puppy with her car 2 days later. And we didn't even bring that up in the
It was something that I like can't even talk. I can't even talk about that stuff.
I was shocked hearing. I was like, wait a sec, did that? And I rewound it just to like make sure I heard it correctly. And then she just kind of goes on of like, my father was a complicated man. Da da da.
There's a lot of animal cruelty that we've read that I just like, I think most of the time we don't even bring it up on the podcast because I like can't talk about it because I'm just like, oh, how do we even get into this without me wanting to die?
Yeah, there was just one moment that really like stuck out to me because it was like, oh man, in the documentary, just like my dad had fights with my mom, but overall is what an amazing man. And then I heard this and I was like, that's a horrible guy. You have a Patreon as well. How do you differentiate? You have the main feed. What's on the Patreon? Because by the way, I got to be on the Patreon a long time ago, and I think there was some audio issues where or some one of you guys couldn't hear me or something like that. But it was like I don't know if that was the case, but it was so awesome. What else do you do on the Patreon?
We talk about the weather and our commutes. It's really us. Like, if you like our friendship, it's us like bantering. And then we'll talk about like this week, we talk about Haley versus Selena. We'll talk about something we watched on Netflix. It's really open-ended for everyone to talk to. Sometimes we have guests, which we love.
What do you guys think about Haley and Selena really quick?
Oh, overall, we think it's a stand war, not a person-to-person war. Like, I think.
Do you think we'll have to take up arms? Do you think this is going to go?
I think this is what I literally keep saying. It's like World War I, where the eyebrow photos was the shooting of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, where it's like, okay, the incident itself is just a trigger for something that's in the works.
Everything
brewing.
All of these things now come out. Everybody's like, I've saved these clips for years now, just to release right now. Like, it is wild.
My larger standpoint is the Selena fans are not doing Selena any favors by doing this. I don't think if Selena now feels that she was getting bullied by Kylie and Haley, I don't even think she felt that way at the beginning, but she does now because she's been convinced of it. I don't think dragging any human being, any adult woman who is 30 into this kind of argument with your ex's new wife is good for anybody. I don't think they're helping her. I think that Haley is one of the most bullied people on the internet and I don't even like her. I think it is so out of control and that we need to figure out a definition of bullying because what is happening to Haley is bullying and being a bitch is not bullying. And we have to figure out the two differences, just like Craig Conover.
I mean, imagine her having to explain this to Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Meryl Streep. Like, here's what's going on, you guys. This girl, Haley Bieber. I mean, like, I just always think about like Selena has this kind of really interesting, amazing career, and imagine her explaining it to these other luminaries that she's working with. And I always like, does Steve Martin and Martin Short have to take a side in this? Like, do they have an opinion on this?
What's been shocking to me is the way celebrities have taken sides. I just saw a list of all the people that have unfollowed Haley, and it's like J-Lo. And I'm like, J-Lo, you're 50 years old.
Well, my question was, did J-Lo ever actually follow her? I always just think they're like, oh, she's not following her now, so let's say she unfollowed her. That was my question.
The stans because they keep pretty good tabs on that shit. They like have an inner working, like somebody who is a J-Lo stan follows J-Lo and knows exactly who she follows and keeps, I don't know, I could see it. The other thing is it J-Lo? Whoever mans J-Lo's Instagram, following Haley, who could be a 23-year-old Selinator.
Yeah, I love that it's all like, it's all these social media accounts are always like a lot of them are run by other people. So that's the real opinion makers right there, or the people that run these accounts. Like Kathy Hilton doesn't run her own account. Like, I hate to break that to people. So these things that she says and does that are wacky are sometimes actually put out there by somebody that works for her.
Yeah, I would say overall, it's all just like, I don't know, a bunch of it was just like an inciting incident that has like led to permission for both sides to like fire everything they've got.
Are you allowed to tease any books coming up as we
Well, of course, we're doing Paris. That comes out in March. We're doing.
How can you not do Paris? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got Padma Laksh. I don't know when this comes out, but Padma is coming out.
It's coming out next week. Yeah.
And then we've got.
Wait, was Padma's book good? Did you get that an advance copy?
We liked it. No, it's
like
old.
5 years old or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you no advance copy yet.
We have some, like the new ones that we're doing coming up. We're going to cover the Paris Hilton book when it comes out. We're going to cover Minka Kelly when it comes out. Elliot Page when it comes out. But we have a lot of other fun ones too that are just like books that already exist. Padma Lakshmi. We're doing Seth Rogen soon. We're doing
the yearbook one.
Yeah.
What's the most requested book for you guys to cover? Like, do people like keep
coming up? You know, people always be like, "Have you seen that Prince Harry's coming out with a memoir?" And it's like, yeah, that in my line of work, where all day I think about celebrity memoirs, the biggest celebrity memoir of all time. Yeah, I've heard about it.
Would you ever touch the Kris Jenner one?
We did it.
You did it?
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, maybe.
Everybody says it's like weirdly tawdry. I don't know if that's I haven't read it, but like,
well, you know, I think
it was so early in the Kardashian empire that I don't think that they had like fully crafted what they were doing yet. So it was like saucier than I think anything that would come out now.
My argument would be, obviously it's like on the eve of Chris Humphrey marrying Kim. So like it ends with, and look, all my kids are so happy. Courtney's with Scott, Chloe's with Lamar, Kim is about to marry Chris. Everybody's settled and we're all growing up. So that's kind of silly, but I would argue that you already see in that what I think is one of the geniuses of Kris Jenner, which is that she is more than willing to take a hit. And so I think, you know, she's always jumping on the bombs reputationally. She's happy to be the villain. And so she really does paint herself as a villain in a way that I think always like covers everyone else's ass. You know what I mean?
Is the best way to read these books sometimes years after they've come out, do you find?
It definitely depends. Some of them, I mean, it depends on the books. I would say a good memoir is supposed to not exist in the moment. Like, I think the Chris one kind of holds up, honestly. I wouldn't call it a good memoir, but like any of the ones that we've read that are good should not have to be read in the moment. The problem is a lot of the ones that we do read are released for that moment. So sometimes like the Heather Gay's book was like meant to come out this year. Like Lala Kent's book was like commentary on information that was like currently happening. So, you know, sometimes we'll read a book that like kind of served that purpose, but we'll read it 5 years later. And so we're like, okay, well, this book was intended. Jodie Sweetin is a good example. Like that book came out a long time ago and it was intended to be like a little bit of assistance for her reputation while she was like fighting for custody of her child. And
one of the most interesting things I think that would change about that book is she was adopted and she was told by her parents to lie about being adopted so that nobody questioned that they had their adopted daughter working 100 hours a week. And at the time she's like, but it was because I loved it and I love it. And they were the best parents ever. And I never felt bad about anything. And even though and then you find out at the end of the book that her custody agreement says that her parents have to be present when she's with her daughter. So it did make me go, oh, well, this is why you don't have a single negative thing to say about the way you were raised, because if your parents are deemed unfit parents to you, then there goes any access you have to your own daughter. You need them to be the reasonable ones as like character witnesses.
Or like you need them to just like be in a good mood around you so that they are willing to like show up and like perpetuate this agreement. If they are mad at you, they're going to say like, well, we're not going to do this anymore. And then you don't see it, whatever.
Which also reminds me of the Jeanette McCurdy book that you guys covered as well, talking about that relationship with her mom and working, which I found very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's a phenomenal memoir. But again, people wanted more from her from the Nick stuff. She was able to do that memoir because her mom passed away, I feel. So that chapter is kind of closed and she can say whatever she wants to say. I think she could do another great memoir in 20 years that would be more honest about the Nickelodeon times.
So basically when books are like about a certain point in time specifically, and then we read them 7 years later, it's like not as good.
Well, thank you guys for spending so much time with us today. I really appreciate it. I really look up to what you guys are doing. And, you know, it's just fantastic. And you guys, you already know them, but if you don't, just go check out one episode. I think you're going to be sold immediately. In the show notes, I'm going to put access to their Patreon, their show dates. These shows are selling out. So make sure you get your tickets ASAP, because I think this will be a really, really fun tour to go see before they get to like Kanye West Yeezus territory where they just lose their minds.
I can't wait.
What are you guys doing this weekend? What's on the agenda? Anything fun?
Oh my God, I just found out I'm moving, so I have to.
Oh, perfect. Oh, I mean, just like a little move. Okay, great. Thank you for doing this on Move Weekend. What about you, Ashley?
I guess reading. And then I have a bachelorette party. I'm going to be in the Bahamas.
Wait, did you just forget you're going to be in the Bahamas? You're like, I'm reading, but I'll also be in the Bahamas this weekend?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, you guys, Celebrity Memoir Book Club, go check them out immediately. Thank you guys so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is so fun.